we're held back by fear or self-doubt or some kind of lie that we're believing that the enemy planted there. And so what we're called to do is to bring people back into the truth and to get them back on track, to realize their full potential and to live on purpose.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast. My name is Nancy Moore, and I am the host of this weekly podcast that provides career and creative inspiration to help you build a passionate and purpose-filled life. You'll hear from guests that will help you tap into your creative potential, pursue a career with passion, and build on your biggest and best resource, yourself. I'm excited to have you join this conversation. I'm so happy you're here. Let's get started. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to thank the sponsor of this podcast, Laura Blair, founder of Blair Hollow Candle Company. Handcrafted candles that are thoughtfully created, non-toxic, and clean burning with a collection of curated fragrances. And you guys, I love these candles. Personally, I look for non-toxic candles to make sure I'm not polluting the air inside my home with unwanted chemicals. And Blair Hollow Candle Company blends signature fragrances inspired by nature, travel, and home, and they are blended to perfection using pure essential oils. And the wooden wick in my current candle adds a layer of coziness to hear the crackling as it's burning. Blair Hollow Candle Company, artisan candles handcrafted in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You can find them on Instagram at Blair Hollow Candles. And if you're local, they're available at Meadow Gold Mac in Tulsa at 1306 East 11th Street. You guys, check them out. They are absolutely incredible. And now, on with the podcast. In this episode, you'll hear from Dr. Megan Weinkauf, who's an executive leadership coach and also a professor who is involved in some fascinating research looking at significance of purpose in life, neuroscience in leadership development, trauma-informed leadership practices, the power of mindset, and the conquering of fear. And all of that is so important. And we're going to talk about it in the podcast. I'm such a geek on this stuff, but I just loved hearing her talk about this research. So she's going to explain in really simple terms what she's researching and why her current research will be beneficial for people. And then she also shares information just on characteristics that good leaders should have, but she goes a little deeper, and that's exactly where I wanted to go. And so this conversation I enjoyed tremendously, and I hope you do too. Okay, Megan Weinkauf, I am so happy to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
This is going to be a great conversation. I know it will, because we both prayed that we talked about the stuff that we need to share. And there's somebody out there that needs to hear about what we're talking about today. But I am trying to remember how I was referred to you, but we met probably about 9 months ago and had coffee and just connected instantly because we have similar backgrounds. And then recently, you don't know this, but at my last event, Conversations with Passion and Purpose, I gave a questionnaire to everybody at the end for them to answer. And one of the questions was referring a future person on the podcast or a speaker, and your name was written down.
Aww.
And so anyway,
so
I thought that was really cool. And I thought, okay, I've got to have her on the podcast. So I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you for having me. I always love talking with you.
I know. We enjoy it. We have fun. We talked a lot before we even recorded. And then I thought, okay, we got to stop and hit record because some of this is so good, or all of it is so good. So if you would just give people a little idea about your background for those who don't know you, that would be great.
Okay, well, born and raised in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and we were talking earlier, but I was the first in my family to go to university and went to the University of Arkansas. My mom went back and now has her master's. My little sister is 9 years younger than me. She has a few degrees from OSU. And the only one in my family, my uncle, had gone to the university. My great aunt lived in Tulsa, and we came to Tulsa a lot growing up. And she worked for Williams Companies. She didn't have a degree in accounting, but she was very much an expert and worked a lot in that department. So that's really the only reference that I had whenever, you're in the College of Business and they're like, what degree are you going to choose? Okay, accounting. And at that time, I thought it was a pretty rational decision because you need accountants, whether good times or bad times from an economic standpoint. And so I just went with it, and I did like math. I guess that's part of my background. I advanced into accounting and spent, a little over 12 years there. I really loved cost accounting and manufacturing, aerospace and defense manufacturing. And then I started working with an executive coach and started experiencing within myself that there's more. And I really do feel like it was, and believe that it was the Lord calling me to more. I had a boss at that same time that I started working with a coach, and he just told me, he said, you're made for more, and you need to go for higher education. You need to go for your master's. And so that's whenever I started my MBA with the Jack Welch Management Institute, and had the chance to learn firsthand from Jack and Susie Welch. And I had a professor in my first class, Leadership in the 21st Century, who also went to Regent University, where my PhD's from. And what is so interesting, Nancy, is that I almost gave up on myself in that first class. And I was doing great. My grades were awesome. And then I had this period of self-doubt, and I didn't do well on this paper. And Dr. Toshi, I remember, and it will stay with me for the rest of my life, because that's what I try to be as a professor for my students now. He knew there was something off. So he called me and he's like, Megan, this is not you. So he called me back into my purpose and what I was supposed to be doing. He was like, I'll let you redo the paper and turn it in. And I ended up getting a 4.0 in my MBA program, and then went on for my PhD at Regent University in organizational leadership and concentrating in human resource development, and had wonderful professors there as well. I also am married 15 years in September, and then my son is 5 years old, and I had him my first year in my PhD program. And that was also about the time where during that time, I started my career in higher education and had quite a wonderful journey at ORU, and now I've transitioned over to NSU for this time period, and working in the College of Business as a management professor with amazing students. And that is why I do what I do, because we're held back by fear a lot, or self-doubt, or some kind of lie that we're believing that the enemy planted there. And so what we're called to do is to bring people back into the truth, and to get them back on track, to realize their full potential, and to live on purpose.
Okay, I love that. So on the track of being a professor, you are able to research. And there's something that you mentioned prior to recording, and I didn't have a question about this, and now I'm so interested, but you mentioned trauma research, trauma in the workplace. So if you could just go into that a little bit, Sure. I think that would be interesting for people to hear.
Sure. So my my area of research really is like neuroscience and leadership. I'm so excited that that field is advancing. That we're looking at, mindset and our habits of thinking and how they align with the behaviors that we're enacting, that we're every single day as leaders. So, and then looking at that gap, because we're never going to be perfect, right? But our brains are able to change. I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I've heard people say before, like, well, people don't change. Yes, they do. Like, and if us as leaders can help them with their neural connections to see a new way, and to see a new way, we have to be the example. And so in the midst of that, and from my own healing journey and walking with a lot of other people and understanding the area of trauma and how it really does impact our brains, it impacts our performance, it impacts our job satisfaction, our productivity, all of those areas. And so that's what really sparked my passion to dive deeper into this and go in and really develop out a trauma-informed leadership model and framework. So there's training that can be done. So in the midst of that, that's where I'm at in the study right now. We're doing a qualitative study, and we're looking at expanding the definition of what it means to experience trauma in the workplace, because what could be felt and experienced as trauma to me could be completely different to you and to other people. And we can't just say that very, high levels of violence are the only thing that is traumatic. I mean, changing bosses, having to change a career, having a child, while you're working as a public accountant, going through mergers and acquisitions and system implementations and just difficult environments, all of that can really add up. And so what I'm looking at is how people, and in the qualitative interview process, it's having people share their story in an anonymous way, of course, but then looking at like their stress coping mechanisms and what they have done to really build resilience in that way, so that they can lead at higher levels, and then they can show up and be present for others. Because what I see right now as a growing concern is we're so distracted that we aren't intentional with people. And in those micro moments of connection, if we are truly present, that's what builds those neural connections that can change someone's life, and it can change our lives in the process. So I believe this research is really important. I think it will make people more patient, instead of just being so I'm real big on transformational leadership instead of transactional leadership. And what I mean by that is transformational leadership. There's something called like you're in it with someone. You're in the middle of the messy process of transformation. This is something that the Lord's been working with me with lately, of this concept of long suffering. And walking with someone on their path, then you never know what leader is going to emerge out of someone else. But if we just see behaviors and like, oh, well, you know what? I don't like their performance. You're fired, go on. The cost of hiring and turnover is so incredibly high. And you know this as an accountant, and that's where I go from a cost accounting standpoint. But if we can shift it to the point where I'm going to walk with you through this process. Here is training that's going to help all of us understand what's going on even in our brains as we're processing life. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to know everyone's story, right? Or they're going to be super open with you. But seeing a behavior and just reacting to the behavior instead of responding to what might be going on at a deeper level, that's two different things. And even leaders who have gone through a lot of leadership development, well, now we're seeing companies, and I'm so excited about this, have leadership development departments. and organizational behavior departments to teach it to everyone, because everyone needs to learn how to lead themselves, how to lead others. It's not just for the select few in a leadership program or management program or the C-suite.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I love that. So, I'm trying to think of what to ask you next, because there is so much. Let's unpack your interest in this specifically. Like, what specifically ignited in you to want to study this and try to help people in the leadership and in trauma and all of this area?
Yeah. Well, I've had the chance to be under some really great leaders, and I've also had the chance to be, and I say the chance and the opportunity to learn from leaders who need developed and were causing more harm than helping people heal in their process, and so quick to just dismiss, instead of develop. And the leaders, and it's been not that many. I mean, I could probably count on one hand, maybe on 3 fingers, the people who have had significant impact on my life and who did not give up on me whenever I was going through a hard time. And, one of those people is Dr. Toshi, my professor. I mean, I have had a lot of teachers over the years, but there's been just a select few that have said, no, I'm calling you to a higher level. I'm letting you do this again. This is not who you are. And was there to let me process. And then he pointed me in the direction that I needed to go. I've had, a boss that was like that saw more in me than I could see in myself and called me to that higher level, and then was patient with me through my process of learning. And I've worked with a lot of students, thousands now. And it is my favorite thing in the whole wide world when they realize their true potential. When they walk through the fear, I will walk through the fear with them. I always say, just come to my office, cry it out, process what you need to process, and then we're going to get back up and you're going to get in there and you're going to do the work that you need to do. And that's where it really has come from, because we all have experienced a level of trauma, even going back to our childhood. And some of the things that have not been healed from our childhood, it's still holding us back. It's our hurts and our hangups. And so that's really why. And I mean, even in my own life, experiencing fear and doubt and like not feeling like I was good enough to do whatever. I mean, those are significant milestones in my life that I had to overcome, and I leaned into and found as I lean into, you gain deeper levels of healing and greater freedom because we're just all humans, and you are made here for a purpose. I'm put here for a specific purpose. And it's never like really about a position. I mean, God's going to put us in positions to carry out his purpose, but it's for his people. Mm-hmm. And to heal others and to walk alongside them and to launch them into their purpose.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you about the, when you mentioned that companies have positions, to help managers and to help leadership and that kind of thing. It's too often, and maybe this will get us out of this situation, but it's too often that people who do a really good job in their current position are promoted, and maybe they shouldn't really be in management. They do a great job, for them in their position, but then they don't know how to be a manager. And a lot of times that causes more harm than good, I think. But I would like for you to kind of talk more about what you see in good leaders and maybe some characteristics of some good leaders.
Well, whenever you were talking, it sent me back to a client I had. I love first-time leaders and working with them, especially if they're really good individual contributors. And this leader in particular was so good, developer, IT, technical, but the people side of things needed a lot of work. And I enjoyed so much, teaching that how to transform into that role and what their people needed. But you're right. I mean, how leaders are chosen, it's really important that you don't just like launch someone into another position without giving them adequate training way before time. Now, I know that's unrealistic, as we live in this wild world where things happen constantly, but there are ways to still have it. Like if you don't have that department, you do have access. Maybe you pay for them to have an executive coach. I know a lot of companies are doing that now too. Certain levels of leadership and above, they have people that have executive coaches outside of the company. So then they are able to be more authentic and vulnerable and really experience deep transformation. But there's still ways to make it happen, for your people. Some characteristics that I have been thinking about a lot, and we can go the typical route, but I was thinking deeper. And that is, the first one is to be a person of peace. And what does that mean to me? Internal peace. So I go to the chiropractor. Other people probably go to the chiropractor too. But I love this analogy because my spine needs to be back in alignment. It's just a little off, and I have a toolkit, so to speak, and I have a process that I go through, and I know whenever I'm out of alignment, with where the Lord is wanting me to be, or maybe my attitude is off, or maybe there's like patience I need to work on, which that's what I'm working on, even more patience right now. And it's like, okay, wow, I don't like how I'm showing up in that way. How can I get back to a place of peace? Oftentimes it's either someone I need to forgive myself, surrender to the Lord, trust God. I mean, I have to trust. And I've even written in my journal so many times, like, I trust you, God, I trust you, God, I trust you, God, hundreds of times, because we're living this human life and sometimes we're just taking the next step that we know to take. So what does it mean for you to get back to a place of peace where we're not so frantic? We know God holds all time and space. He's in ultimate control. Can we trust him in the daily minuscule tasks, just like we do in the big moves of our lives? Can we trust him with our time in the 24 hours? Now, I still believe in time blocking and I still believe in all of that, but I'm looking for divine moments of connection and seeing those as divine instead of disruptions to my day. And it's little things. I mean, maybe you're 5 minutes late getting out the door. Well, what if that was protecting you from something that you didn't even know? An accident or something. Like, we don't know, but I have to trust God in that instead of just beating myself up that I was 5 minutes late. Like, that's silly, but it's human and we're all human. I'm pretty sure we all are. The other thing that I've been thinking about a lot is patience. This patience and long suffering. And we're not taught in our world to be patient. We're taught to, hustle and perform and produce, and all those things are great. And I think you'll still do those things, but you can still be patient with people and their process. Maybe you've worked through something, a level of healing, or maybe you've gone through, like you used to deal with a lot of fear, and now that's not as big of a deal for you, but it might be for someone in your family. It might be for someone in your life, and they're not there yet. So we have to be patient with people in their process. Maybe it could be something like they're not, someone's still working on their time management skills. We'll be patient with them because it's not going to be overnight. And if you go and study neuroscience and learning, you'll know that. Yeah. And the other thing was joy. That's something that I have been just pondering for years now, of what does it mean to be a person of joy? Well, it's a mindset. It's a choice. It's happiness is so fleeting and it can be so temporal. But joy really stems from gratitude. And whenever we are joyful and peaceful and patient, then think about all the things that come out of that place of kindness and goodness and sacrifice and service. And I believe we can show up better. I mean, that's where, humility comes from, and some of these other characteristics that we see whenever people think about authentic leaders or servant leaders or transformational leaders. What about peaceful, patient, and joyful leaders?
I love that so much. Everything you're saying, I feel like I follow up with, I love that so much, Megan. I love it. So, okay, if you could kind of talk about too, I know that you are a full-time professor. You teach at several different colleges, if I can say that. I mean, NSU is, your primary place, but you also have a coaching business. And so I just would like for people to kind of understand how you work with people and a little about that coaching if they'd like to reach out to you.
Sure. I love first-time leaders, although I mean, in that development process, if you haven't worked with people before, or if you're having some kind of crisis with your team, I enjoy that too. And I've done consulting, I've done strategy consulting, but team building and really diagnosing what's going on in your team. Maybe there's something that you need to work on. How can we figure out what's the root cause of whatever's blocking your team from performing at its best, or even you performing at your best, or if you're like, I don't know how to work with people, they're driving me crazy, whatever it is. I mean, we feel all those things as leaders. That's really the people that I love to work with the most. So if you don't know what you're doing, then reach out and we can craft a customized plan that will help you perform at your best as a leader, not only professionally, but you'll be showing up in all areas of your life better.
You have a couple of free resources, and I don't know if you want to mention those, because I think that they're great and that are available to whoever, wants to connect with you. And then,
yes.
So if you want to maybe talk about that.
Yes, you can go to my website, The Faithful Leader, thefaithfulleader.com, and you can click on the free resources. There's a podcast there where I have had some conversations, and we're still building that, but really deep conversations about people in leadership who have faced quite significant challenges and how they move through that. And I think that's good for people to listen to, the challenges, because we can tout the successes all day long, but it's in the depths of despair that we are walking through, the valley of the shadow of death, so to speak, that you will really resonate and relate. And then you can say, okay, I can do this too. And take some tips from what they've done, because leadership can be lonely sometimes. I also have a blog there, and then I do have access to my dissertation, which is on the mindset of a transformational leader. So that's what I focus on, and I'm happy to talk about that more.
Okay. I am actually going to have you come back, because I know you know this, but all of the questions that I wrote out, I don't think I asked but just one of those. So
that's okay.
This conversation will need to, of course, be continued, but it has been so great for you to share more about what you're doing. And I just love learning more about the trauma leadership, because I didn't even know that was a thing, and it is so needed. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's
I'm glad.
actually not a thing yet.
Oh, because it's
hopefully.
research.
Yeah.
Megan.
Well, it is trauma-informed, because there's trauma-informed care. There's trauma-informed. There's been a lot done in some of the social science spaces, but not as much in like business. So that's
Okay.
where we're bringing it into.
Yeah, that's where it needs to be.
Yeah.
So, and you're the right person to bring it in for sure.
Let's do it.
yeah, let's do it. Well, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. This has been great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I appreciate you being here. And don't forget to connect with me on social media. Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn are at Sharing Passion and Purpose, and Twitter is at Passion Sharing. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.